Good day, everyone. Welcome to the WEFI Nexus Policy Webinar number 8. We'll be starting in 2 minutes' time.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Because, yeah, sometimes these things have some problems. It's good to get it all sorted.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining.
But also quick clarification, you will present. I have your slides open as a backup, but you will be present, right? The slides.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So Catherine will be starting with you and then followed by the Feroz.
Okay, I'm also comfortable with the other way around.
Okay, so we are fine the other way around. Yep.
Yeah, please let Feroz go first.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, all right. Okay, no, that's good. Good day, everyone. My name is Mohsen Hafiz. I'm a strategic program director of water food ecosystem at International Water Management Institute. I'm also the lead for the water, energy, food, environment nexus area of work under the Policy Innovation Science Program, which is managed by the CGIR. That's funded by the CGIR. And today we are just joining it here for the WEFI Nexus Policy Webinar number 8. And then today the webinar topic is adopting agriculture and water management to rising salinity. We know that when the worldwide salinity is increasing and affecting the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus, and then that the big question is coming how to move forward. Can farmer join researchers in thinking about pathways locally, and can we identify future salinity hotspots globally? There are many approaches available on the salinity, and then there are the many countries are dealing in the salinity in the part of the subcontinent, in the MENA region, also in Australia as a continent, and many other regions. So today we are really fortunate enough that we have a two presenters who are the well-known, the global expert on the salinity. So first is we will be Dr. Muhammad Feroz Islam, who is a researcher water and food at Wageningen Environmental Research at Wageningen University in Netherlands. He is a water sources expert with a hydrological and hydrodynamic and morphodynamic modeling background, and he will be talking it about the future hotspots for salinity assessments at the global and national level. And then will be second presenter is Professor Catherine Trevisha Van Schiltinger, a senior researcher water management and food security. She is also the senior expert water and food system in Delta, affiliated with IMI and then the Scaling for Impact in Netherlands CGIAR research program. I will explain her topic later on. Over to you, Feroz. So you have 12 minutes.
Okay. I will share my screen. Let's see if it works. Okay. Share. I hope you can see my screen. I'll put
Yes,
it in a present.
yeah, we can see you. Please go in the
Yeah.
present mode.
Yeah. I hope if it's in the presentation mode, you can still see it. Is that the case? Okay. So as I was introduced, I'm Firoz. I'm working with Wageningen University in research, in the environmental research, and in that water and food team. Today, I'll be talking about the methodology that we are developing on salinity hotspot identification and also other global stresses at global scale and also at a regional scale in Bangladesh. So I'll start with discussing about our methodology that we developed and are developing still on salinity hotspot identification globally and how did we apply it to a regional case in Bangladesh, and then climate stressors globally and climate stressors in Bangladesh. The stressors are in relation to agriculture. So yeah, so when we started thinking about salinity, the reason why we started about thinking about salinity was because salinity is one of the uh, primary challenges for agriculture production around the world. but we wanted to know first what drives the salinity. So we did a research on different regions around the world, focusing on delta landscape, semi-arid and arid areas, and small island development states. What we found out is there are quite a few different kind of drivers, global drivers and regional drivers. So for global drivers, so we all know one at least is sea level rise, but also temperature is increasing due to different kind of processes and climate change and natural soil salinization. But when we look at like regional drivers, it relates to more towards like agriculture and water management practices, such as irrigation system, overexploitation of groundwater, and land use change. And this brings challenges specifically to food security globally and locally as well. So we thought, okay, we know salinity is a challenge. So we wanted to find out where is it the biggest challenge right now. And to find it out, we combined soil salinity and water salinity together. So we started collecting data that is available online and freely available with open source on water salinity and soil salinity, even though there were quite a few water salinity measurements around the world, so 16.3 million measurements. But as you can see from the figure on left top corner, the coverage globally is not that much, but it still indicates where the salinity is a bit high. For soil salinity, we found some data with ISRIC and others on global soil salinity. And when we combine these two, we found out, as Mr. Mohsin was saying, salinity is actually quite high in eastern coast and western coast of Australia, then in MENA region and both coastlines of USA, and a large part of irrigation or irrigated areas in China and India, but also in southern part of Africa. So when we find this out, we thought like, okay, this is a data-driven process, and how does it look like in the literature review? Does other literature support this as well? So we dive into a literature review, and we saw that like a lot of literature actually indicates that these areas are becoming highly saline and having different kind of impacts. And what kind of impact there is? So it shows there was a report from World Bank shows that different countries are actually losing a lot of productivity, agriculture productivity. Top of the list is USA, Argentina, and India, and Ukraine. So, okay, after that we thought, okay, we understood where the salinity is currently high and how is it impacting agriculture productivity. But what happens to the areas where salinity is increasing, and which areas will be vulnerable to increasing salinity? To identify those areas, we combined 8 different variables related to weather and climate, such as precipitation, temperature, evaporation, and coastal flooding, which relates to sea level rise or sea level, and water and agriculture management practices, such as how much groundwater we extract, so groundwater depth, soil moisture, what kind of irrigation do we do? Is it rain-fed irrigation, or is it irrigated with groundwater or surface water? And what kind of changes is happening in water availability? When we combine all these factors, we estimated a vulnerability index globally, which indicates rightly some of the areas which are vulnerable to increasing salinity, such as the MENA region, the sub-Saharan region, the Australia part of a large part of Australia. But also interestingly, it also indicates the areas which use a lot of surface water irrigation, such as large part of India and northeastern coast of China. But interestingly, it also highlighted the Amazonia as really vulnerable. That's interesting because Amazonia is a freshwater ecology, and when the salinity will be increasing in there, it will have a large impact on the ecosystem there. Then we thought, okay, we know which areas are vulnerable to increasing salinity. And we wanted to know, okay, what kind of agriculture practices and what is being grown there. So we took a look at 3 different crops: maize, rice, and wheat. Among them, maize is the least salt tolerant and wheat is the most salt tolerant. And what we saw was a bit interesting as well. Even though maize and rice are less salt tolerant than wheat, they are currently being cultivated in areas which are actually more vulnerable to salinity increase. So they are being cultivated in vulnerable areas, mostly in Southeast and South Asia, which produces a lot of grains for the whole world. That means with increasing salinity, there will be an impact of food security around the world, and we need to take necessary steps right now. Then we thought, okay, that's a global analysis. Can this method be applied to a local case? So we thought we could apply it to Bangladesh Delta, specifically southwest and south central delta of Bangladesh. So we combined the soil salinity data that we could find and water salinity data together and did the same analysis to identify the hotspots for southwest and south central Bangladesh for salinity. And we generated this map and showed it with experts and shared it with the local and regional stakeholders when we visited Bangladesh to confirm that this is actually the ground truth. And it shows the mangrove forest of Bangladesh, the Sundarbans, are, of course, they have higher salinity, but there are other reasons behind it because they lack freshwater flow from upstream. So we thought, okay, this is the current state. What happens in the future? Can we take a look at the future salinity? So we dig deep and we try to find out whether there are projections on water and soil salinity. Luckily, Bangladesh has Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, where they studied what will be the impact of different IPCC scenarios on water salinity. But when we tried to find out soil salinity, there were no projection available. So we thought we'll give it a try with data-driven and machine learning tools. So we combined 8 different parameters, such as distance from the coast, temperature maximum, sea level, distance from the upstream freshwater discharge point, precipitation, irrigation practices, and distance from freshwater rivers. When we combined all this, we could build a model that fairly represents the future soil salinity. And we combined that future soil salinity with the future water salinity to produce a hotspot map, salinity hotspot map for Bangladesh, which indicates that the areas which are not currently saline will be facing salinity in the future. That's quite interesting for Bangladesh because the area in the south central region, in the southern part, which here it says in the map on the right corner, Barisal, it produces a lot of rice and grains for Bangladesh. And it depends on its freshwater resources. So in the future, when the salinity will be increasing, these areas will be hardest hit because they are already reliant on freshwater reserves or resource that they have they will not have in the future. That indicates the food security of Bangladesh will be in danger. So there is a room for or need for assessment and adjustment and adaptation already so that we can face the difficult future and have our food security attached. Okay, so then we thought, is salinity the only stress on agriculture or there are others as well? So we again did some literature review. We found out in IPCC reports and other reports that temperature extremes, droughts, and floods also impact food security around the world. And if we take a look at what IPCC report actually says, is that the crop yield productivity will have different impact in different regions. For example, I highlighted here Asia part. So the blue ones are observed and the other colors are projected. So what Asia's projection shows is that for maize, rice, soybean and wheat, they will have a larger or higher negative impact from climate change. But if we also take a look at North America, the impact is different. The impact is positive. So there are different impacts of climate change around the world. But the issue is in Asia, in South Asia and Southeast Asia, they produce a lot of grains for around the world, which supplies around the world. So that means if these areas are impacted negatively, that will have a severe impact for future food security. Then is that okay? So that's the global case. What happens in Bangladesh? So luckily in Bangladesh, there was a study done on climate vulnerability assessment, and Catherine was part of it. And this shows like the agriculture production of Bangladesh, specifically agricultural land availability of Bangladesh in southwest and northwest areas are quite vulnerable to climate change. So, okay, what kind of climate change and what kind of stressors are we talking about? When we look at this, we see that these two regions, even though both of them are quite vulnerable to climate change or climate stressors, they have different stressors. Southwest are primarily impacted by salinity and flooding, specifically coastal flooding. So in Bangladesh, we have at least one cyclone every year that overtops or breaches the dikes of our polders, and that causes prolonged flooding. But in the Northwest, it's more towards drought, because during the dry season, even though Bangladesh has a lot of rainfall during monsoon, in Northwest during dry season, there are hardly any water, and there is impact of drought there, and there is a question of the desertification, over exploitation of groundwater there. And during flood season, during monsoon, it also gets flooded with the river overtopping over the banks. So when we figured out, okay, what kind of stresses are there, then the logical next step for us is to explore what adaptation measures, adaptation strategies can we take, and can we assess their impact. So that's what we're doing currently. And that's actually the end of my presentation. I think our next activities will be explained by Catherine, where we actually engage with local and regional stakeholders and try to figure out different pathways and other stuff. I don't want to say what she's going to say.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Feroz, for an excellent presentation and highlighting about from the global, the metallurgy, from the salinity to the local level, and then what's the climate change impact and how the metallurgy is not talking about the past one, but future salinity and how that's impacting on the food security in the context of Bangladesh. So now we have another eminent researcher, Catherine, who has more than 25 years of the experience with the warning and environmental research, in the university. And she will be talking about formulating food system transition pathways with farmers in increasing saline areas in Bangladesh. Over to you, Catherine.
Okay. I hope you can hear me and I hope you can see the slides. Just
Yes.
checking.
Yep. Sure.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much, Dr. Mohsin, for giving us the floor to present our work and also to communicate with you as a wide audience. Good morning, good evening, and good night to all of you. My name is Catharine Terwiescha van Scheldinga. I work at Wageningen Environmental Research in the team Water and Food. And basically, I'm working on water and food system interactions. And a lot of my work is related to Bangladesh. What I like to talk to you about today is about the transition pathways, and in particular, how we were discussing about these pathways with farmers. As Feroz already said, salinity is increasing in deltas. There is research being done on whether that increase in salinity intrusion comes from the sea level rise or also from the reduced river discharge, and what then the distribution is about the two. But in general, it's always very complex. And for the complexity, I show you on the right-hand side how the month-wise EC value in Shemnagar is variable over the years. You see the yellow and the blue line are in a way higher than before. You see also that the timing is not always exactly the same, but it is it's very unpredictable and it's fluctuating, though basically still in the monsoon season, the salinity kind of goes away because of the rain, while in the dry season it becomes very high. I think this is typical for that area, and in many other areas it may not exactly be like that. So though we talk about salinity, the situation is very different in different areas. But in order to understand better, we try to look at it from a water and food systems perspective. We did so in a project called Deltas Under Pressure, where also a special issue was produced, which appeared last year. I put a link here, which we actually did together with CG colleagues. You can see in there also what I'm kind of trying to explain a bit on the right, that basically we have a systems approach where we then link to a transition approach and then also link to a process approach where together with stakeholders we analyze, understand, prioritize and find pathways for transition. And we learn in the process. Now, a lot of this work is happening at the national scale level. I'm kind of talking about the case in Bangladesh, and there are actually many challenges there. More food is needed from less space. Water management is about surface water management and groundwater management. But what about then the water in the soil? And what do we know about that? And how do we know whether farmers are what kind of chemicals farmers are using? Population in cities needs food at lower prices, but also people in the rural area are buying food, and not only producers of food. There is a need for quick changes. There's a need for jobs, and at the same time, some things will take time and need investment. So that is a kind of contradiction. So it's a kind of situation where it's complex and it's uncertain, and still we do want to kind of talk with farmers about what is the direction and where would it go. But then, do we actually know what farmers know about salinity or what their idea is about the salinity? So what we did is we organized meetings with farmers in Khulna, Butiagata and Rampal, which from top to bottom is a kind of less saline, a bit more saline and more saline area along the coast in Bangladesh, to find out what their understanding is about the salinity, the current salinity, as well as the kind of future salinity and what they would prefer to happen in that future. So in a very kind of concise format, I'm sharing you here the findings of this workshop. And then what we found is that for water and agriculture, water and livestock, water and shrimps, water and drinking water, in the existing situation, that farmers are still kind of growing monsoon rice, but in the dry season, salinity is increasingly creating problems for growing crops. With regard to livestock, also water and fodder are increasingly problematic during the dry season. For shrimp and other fish, in some cases, because in Bangladesh you have a freshwater shrimp and also a kind of saltwater shrimp variety, but some of the shrimp and fish may even die in saline conditions, while others in a way benefit and would like the saline environment. And with regard to drinking water, increasingly it's a problem in the dry season. Now, when we ask farmers about how they perceive the future, farmers are very aware that the salinity might kind of affect the production in agriculture and even make it totally impossible. Farmers are also aware of the need for water and fodder, and that may be more scarce then. With regard to the fishing, farmer expressed the concern that maybe only crab or shrimp would be possible. And for drinking water, they have concern, especially for the children and the elderly. What they would like to happen is that they would prefer that that at the longer term things will be better. They are expecting that technology at affordable cost will become available, and they also look towards government for that. And they would wish that the next generation get education, on the one hand, to deal with the problems in agriculture, but also on the other hand, to be sometimes less dependent on agriculture. What we then did was we organized a workshop at the regional level with government official and academics, which we then asked to go through the same steps. And then we asked their reaction to what the farmers had observed. And in a way, in these steps that we did together with the at the regional level, we found that they come with similar kind of suggestions, though it is easier for government officials and academics to think more ahead and to think that it's important to change. Though in a way also there, it's not easy to think what could then be the exact things that farmers could do. And they kind of confirmed with their observations also that what farmers said. Now, what we find then is that, and this shows that where there is more salinity already, farmers are already kind of moving because there is no other way. While in a way, if the salinity is not so much yet, people are also not that much aware of the impacts or kind of taking steps on towards future and avoiding problems or changing their strategies. Altogether, we do think that then there is a lot of scope to learn, because we do think that farmers who are now in a less saline area, it does not mean that there will not be salinity in future, but if they could learn from farmers who are already in a situation with more salinity, that would be potentially very helpful for them. Now you could discuss that, okay, this is what the farmers do, but then that the farmers need to find ways is not the only bottleneck in finding new ways for dealing with salinity. In another study, we looked at the short versus the long-term solutions and field scale versus more regional scale solutions in case of water management in agriculture where there is salinity. And in the top left corner, you see solutions like salt-tolerant varieties, mulching, drip irrigation. These are, in a way, the solutions that you can do more easily at the field level and that you can also do kind of within a reasonable, kind of quick time frame. However, if you look at the solutions more in the bottom right corner, these are more the water management solution. There you cannot do solutions one by one as farmers, but you have to work together. And also you then kind of end up more in the domain of the water resources ministry. So when moving from field level more to regional level, it's not only that farmers need to change, it's also that you kind of come from the one ministry to the other ministry, and you need to work together there in order to address salinity. What we then did further in a workshop in last September in Bangladesh is that we looked at sustaining in-polder water management in a kind of regional approach for water and food system transition. Here we did not focus on salinity alone, but more on the kind of longer term water management issues. And we used a regional approach in which we then tested kind of 5 elements: mission, actors, coordination, regional context, and pathways for change, with various stakeholders. You see some of the colleagues from the CGIAR Institute, but also from the government, from agriculture, as well as water management side, together with colleagues from the institutes in Bangladesh who thought along with us in this workshop. And what you see is, in a way, there seems to be a bit more space for agriculture and water to work together in order to reach at a joint goal of supporting stakeholders to sustain the in-polder water management. Currently, work is being done on a kind of so-called business model for water management, where these rules are further clarified. And then, in a way, you can imagine then the challenge for scaling will need to be picked up. But that's a kind of whole different story altogether, so I'll not focus on that more, but I thought that making the step from the global to the local level in the presentation of Feroz and then to the farmers, we now kind of move back to that when you are thinking with farmers on potential transition pathways, we also need to look back towards the national level, how you can anchor this. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mohsin, for the discussion part.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I mean, just again translating that one, what's the farmer thinking, what's the transition pathways at a national scale level. That's all is great as a part of that one. And now let me invite our discussion for today, who's a very well-known international expert, Dr. Alok Sikka, who's an agriculture engineer. He has a lot of things. He was the Deputy Director General for the Indian Center for Agriculture Research. Then he worked with IWMI as a country representative for the India and then Bangladesh. And he has a wealth of more than 40 years of experience. And presently he's working with us as a senior fellow with IWMI. Over to you, Dr. Alok Sikka, as a part of the discussion. Share your thoughts and feel free to ask the question. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohsin. Thank you very much for keeping me involved in continuity and giving me this opportunity to, first of all, let me congratulate both the speakers for really making a wonderful presentation. And the one thing which I stuck to me is, like, as we mentioned, global to regional and local, which was presented by Feroz. And then, of course, Catherine took it a step ahead from farm to the landscapes. So that's more from the management point of view. So this is something, yes, I know that that's really interesting. Now, let me come first to Feroz's presentation. What I think I like the idea was what is going to be the projections for the future salinity level. This is something that I know that everybody is talking about the climate change scenarios, and then he has used that using those weather and climate plus water availability indices, and I think the indices which he has used, they are okay to me. It is because always there is room for improvement, but because you need to look into those in the sense that where you get the data easily. So those are the kind of things which he has already taken. So this is something that I think is a new addition to the body of the knowledge which already exists. And again, when of course he was been talking about coming from global to the regional and then doing a more deep analysis for Bangladesh. And that is something I think it is very interesting because more often than not, we try and put the pictures at a global level and using some resolution of data. But when it comes to a local level, that becomes more challenging. And this is something that I think he has done that. And you have also covered, I think I do agree with those kind of crop production losses on maize, wheat, and rice, because I did something for India way back in 2014, 2015, when I was Deputy Director General Natural Resource Management of ICR through our Indian Soil Salinity Research Institute. And we came with really a big number, about 17 million tons annual production loss. And largely, of course, the rice, wheat, and others. So that's kind of a thing. So this is something, this is really good. And particularly when we are coming to the Bangladesh, because we all know, because we are also working on Asia Mega Delta, and we are doing a lot of modeling work as well, which if time permits, maybe I can always talk about that. And now what I think, Firoz, I would like to know is, that you have really done this wonderful presentation and this work, and you looked into the vulnerability indices. And of course, that southwestern coastal belt of Bangladesh is highly vulnerable. And as I think Catherine was pointing out, it's because of the surface salinity, because not that like in various parts of India and others, because it's ingress of salt seawater because of excessive groundwater pumping, that's also taking place, but that's perhaps not the case here in this. Now, what I would like to also know from you, because you ended up in your last slide with the adaptation strategies, right? And you also know that, as you mentioned also, that Bangladesh has a unique Delta Plan 2021. Now, if that is the case for the Delta Plan 2100, how do you think that what you have already developed and presented, and you mentioned also that you have kind of validated with the stakeholders. I do not know what that was a kind of a validation level, but now how do you think that, because future salinity was not part of the Delta Plan. Now with this thing, how do you think that you can influence the policymakers that when they are doing, because Bangladesh is pretty much looking into that. And I guess you are from perhaps Bangladesh, so you know better than me. So how do you think that you have any plans to streamline this thing, to integrate it with a larger data plan, because that is for 2100. So what do you think that you would like to do in this kind of a case? And so how do you internalize it into the Delta Plan more from the policy perspective? So this is something that I think if you can throw some light on that, that I'll really appreciate on that. Thank you. I think maybe Mohsin, you want me to take it for both together or one by one?
It's your call. So you have 10 more minutes.
Yeah, I think maybe let's finish it one by one. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, Feroz.
Yes. Should I talk about the Delta Plan, or which question is directed to me?
The directed question to you is about what is your finding for Bangladesh. I'm going to get into that more from the policy, because Mohsin wanted me to talk more from the policy perspective. So that's why I'm not going into the science. Although I would love to go to science, but I'm coming to the policy perspective. Because that the Bangladesh government is been very keen on developing this area, and now that's the reason they have a Delta Plan 2100. So how do you think what you have done, what you have presented, how it can help Bangladesh government? And then what is the way forward, that how do you think that you can internalize that into the government thinking process and the development program?
Okay, thank you for the question. And it's really, you're right, that the salinity is increasing in southwest part of Bangladesh, and government should take notice. So when they developed the BDP 2100, Bangladesh Delta Plan 2100, they identified different hotspot areas for Bangladesh as well. One of them was southwest, and it was identified for higher salinity as well. But in that process, they took water salinity into account, but they also did some projections. That's what I presented on water salinity. What not only in Bangladesh, globally lacks is the combination of taking soil and water salinity together. So that's what we have done. And in my opinion, that's what adds up from our knowledge to the decision makers or whatever it is. But the question remains, what can Bangladesh do and should they proceed from there? So from Delta Pen 2100, later on, they also prepared National Adaptation Plan recently, where they produced a list of measures they would like to take, a long list of tables where they propose different strategies for different kind of climate stressors. One of them is salinity. And they also stress which government institute or agencies will take the lead and who will be a co-partner in that, and how much budget potentially that might require. So where we can add on is our ongoing research on developing an approach, which Catherine already explained in the regional approach, where we can explore what is the vision and how do we get there, and how do we get there in at a integrated way. So taking the relevant parties together. That's what we have done during our workshop in September. So bringing together water and agriculture for in-polder water management, not just to manage how the infrastructure is going to be operated and maintained, but also how freshwater availability will be maintained, or salinity will be controlled, given the interest of different stakeholders within the polders. So what I see as a plus point or addition to the policymakers from our knowledge is a pathway development tool and how to explore it together and take step by step. So when, as you were discussing about the validation or sharing our hotspot in Bangladesh with different stakeholders, what we have done, we have shared this at national level, national stakeholders, and regional level, regional stakeholders, and also these 3 workshops that Catherine actually showed that we have done with the farmers. So actually at a local level, to identify what at different levels see this as a result, whether this is something they perceive as plausible. And from all of these workshops, it shows, or they opine that, okay, it seems logical. So from these things, what I can say, one more thing is, like, we are engaged with the Department of Agriculture Extension in Bangladesh and also Water Development Board, where we're trying to explore together what and how this can be addressed in the future, and whether this can be embedded in their mandate in both of these organizations. I'm not a policy expert. Catherine knows better than me, so I would put this mic to her now.
No, that's it. That's okay, because the key point which I see is there are areas which you mentioned in your own presentation, which so far they never thought that's the hotspot. Now you are also seeing that because of with the climate change scenarios, some of those areas are also likely to be becoming more salinity prone. So those are the kind of things which policymakers have to be really told that if you don't look into those areas in the future, you are going to cause even much more harm to those areas. So that's something that I think would be very, very important from your point of view to kind of make a dent. All right, so thank you very much. And I don't have any response from that, but only thing is that I know that you can and you should be more engaging with the policymakers. And as Catherine knows that IWMI is also working and the CGIR on this Asia Mega Delta, and we are also working on in Khulna area. So how best we can really work on that. So now moving to Catherine, and I know that one thing which I liked, Catherine, was, of course, based on the kind of the workshops and various sessions which we have had, to have the perspective from the various stakeholders as to what they feel and what they perceive as a risk in terms of the salinity and what they perceive as a kind of the probable solutions or the potential solutions. Now, one thing, as I said in the beginning, I also like the idea that when we are looking into the salinity management, whether it's in the coastal salinity or inland salinity or whatever is the case like, that in that case, you pointed out that yes, it is at the farm level, something you manage, which is basically the crops and the nutrients, and then the water, which is a much larger thing. It is not confined at the local or the farm level, but it is at the watershed or the landscape level. Now, yes, that is right. But I would like to know, because I didn't get into your presentation, that how are you going to do that? How do you think that kind of an integrated system of water and food integrated system? Because we know that the systems approach has to be there. So if you could throw some light on that, and also community-based integrated, or as a participatory polder management. Because, so if you like to throw some light on these 2 points.
Thank you very much for your compliments on that you found our presentations interesting. And also thank you for these questions. Now, I can straight away say that I don't have a final answer on the matter, because this answer on the matter would be very much appreciated, I think. For the last 30 years, I come in Bangladesh, and I can't tell you that I will just with 1 or 2 words have a solution for a very complex and long-standing problem. However, what you said, that how to look at water and food system as an integrated system, that's indeed a very important question in my opinion, because I work on water and food systems, but if I talk with the water people, I will be looked at as if I know something about agriculture, while if I'm with the agriculture people, they will say I'm from water. And the solutions that you find when you have a food system perspective are not necessarily the same ones as when you have a water system perspective. Neither can you the other way around. Now, what I think is the most critical part for having an integrated perspective on water and food systems is that you need to link the different scale levels. Like I said, for water management, if I want, as a farmer, I cannot solve the matter for my fields only. I have to work together with other farmers, and I have to work in a kind of setting where I can do that with other water users who might have competing interests. So that scale level very much need to be part of the analysis for this integrated water and food systems. And also, I need a solution if there are conflicts about the claims on water. Because if I only from an agriculture perspective think I am, for instance, growing rice or another crop in this area, and I want to grow more of that crop, well, then what about the fishermen who are in the same area and who also need the water? And what about the nature who also has water requirement? So the integrated water and food system, in my opinion, should include these different aspects. Now, when you said about the community-based polder management. In the case of Bangladesh, already for the last 30 years, the government of Bangladesh is working on participatory water management. However, it is not so easy how to define the different roles in that, and then how to also let the roles kind of change with the changing situation in the society. Originally, polders were designed for growing rice, and then the infrastructure also was selected for that purpose. However, nowadays, inside a polder, there is not only rice, there could also be many different type of vegetables and other crops, as well as fisheries. And so how then does the infrastructure, how as a water management person, how do I need to design the infrastructure in such a way that it serves the need of many users, as well as that how will those many users play a role in the operation and the maintenance of that infrastructure. And so that's why I find it very interesting that in the case of Bangladesh, I find both on the side of Department of Agriculture Extension, as well as on the side of the Bangladesh Water Development Board, that there is an interest in find ways to how to kind of create, how to sustain the in-polder water management towards the future. And yes, that is not automatically straightforward. There is no kind of one size fits all. But until and unless we get it clear who will do what, and we need to kind of try and find that out as soon as possible, making the roles clear, making it clear who will do what, and in a way how that could change in light of the current circumstances. Does that answer your question?
Pardon?
Does that answer your question at least a bit?
Oh yes, yes. I know that. I know that that doesn't have, that can't have a very straight answer, and it's not a straight jacketed answer that you can get for such a question. And but definitely there is a need for that. And as you mentioned, the issue is there could be a kind of a framework suggested to the both the agriculture and the water department that how they can come together. And as you mentioned, when we are talking about the water systems and the water and agri-food system, I just don't mean the crops only. It does include the aquatic crops as well, fish and shrimp. And particularly when we are talking about this integrated system, it's kind of an integrated farming system or even multiple water use systems where all the other things would also be, because there are a number of situations where shrimp or any kind of fish would add more value, more economic value, and there'll be kind of more so in the system. So I think I see the time is also clicking, so I'll not get into that because maybe there is an audience question. So thank you very much, and maybe I can always interact with you later on answer. Thank you. Over to you, Mohsin.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aloksika, for very interactive discussion. I will just touch base on the last point, what you mentioned about that one, the when we are talking about agriculture system, that's in a river basin, that also not only the crop, but also there are other livelihood, and then the shrimp, particularly the saline aquaculture is one of the major potential, the area which has been impacted, and how we could make sure that one this grows as a part of that one while we are managing the salinity. Our own study in the context of Pakistan that clearly show that one the area which was waterlogged and salinized, farmers for a few years they were not able to do any activity, but now they are adapting themselves and started going for the saline aquaculture and then the shrimp production and everything. But that's where there is a need of much more the guidance and everything, and how we could share those kind of thing. And Bangladesh is a classical example how that could be replicated to the other countries like Pakistan and many other countries in the Central Asia is also another region. But just going back and now looking around the time and everything, we have it only 7 minutes. And thanks, Feroz, for excellent work for highlighting about that. Answering all the questions. And I think you have raised the hand first. Maybe you want to say something, and then I'll come back on one or two questions which I believe you have not addressed yet. Yes, Feroz.
Yeah, just wanted to address the question about saline aquaculture and shrimp culture. So in Bangladesh, that brings a different kind of conflict between users. So saline aquaculture and rice culture or agriculture. But during our different field trips, we have seen different polders which actually had only freshwater agriculture and which polder only had saline aquaculture, specifically shrimps. So at some point, there is a trade-off between them because saline aquaculture also brings salinity in your groundwater and in your soil nearby. And at some point, if there is a disease and which reduces your production for shrimp and saline aquaculture, and then you have to go back to your traditional agriculture, it's really difficult to reclaim those lands back to agriculture production. That's what I've seen in the field. So there is always a trade-off. What should we do? Or whether should we look at like long-term benefits or whether should we look at short-term gains? So yeah, it's should be carefully assessed.
Yep, and that's where that on the water and food system connectivity and at the system level where we need to make a decision what will be the impact, not localize thing and saying it, how that the local thing will be translating toward the overall the sustainability and then the improving the livelihood of the people living at the systems, in the river basin, and what are the connections and what we can do.
Also, just to add
Yes,
there that if you take entire folder as a system,
yeah,
then I do agree there. I am aware of the fact which Firoz you are telling that the fights between the crop growers, and I know I'm aware of that. No, because they would like more salinity because they can grow more of shrimp. But the fact is that when you follow a systems approach, it's not that you are following just a one piece of pond or one piece of a farm. In that system level, when we are looking into, you can always partition the things and you can try to say that where is the trade-off more and so those are the kind of a thing. That's why when we talk about the integrated system comes into picture. I think I'll not take more time over to you.
thank you. Feroz, one of the questions which you have not addressed it, and let me read the question that Hafizur Rahman from Pakistan has asked. As you know, the salinity level continue to rise due to climate change and poor water management. How can affected inland areas where soils no longer support conventional crops like rice be substantially managed through the integration of salt-tolerant aquaculture species and holophyte or salt-resistant crop while ensuring food security, farmer livelihood, and long-term environmental system? You talked briefly about that one, but that's a thing. Anything else you or Catherine want to add on that one?
Should I or Catherine? Okay, so about like saline aquaculture or halophytes. So we have seen some experimental activities in Bangladesh on how to use halophytes to recover or reduce the impact of soil salinity and water salinity. Also, keeping in mind food production and productivity, because halophyte can give you some economic benefits as well. But in the end, in my opinion, if there is again a trade-off and synergies there as well. So if you go for saline tolerant varieties for crops and production, that means you will be irrigating the land with at least a bit of saline irrigation, and that will keep on increasing day by day if you don't leach the salinity from the soil out with fresh water if you have water available. Well, we have seen that in Egypt. They are looking at using more saline tolerant varieties and they reuse the water quite often. And then at some point from our model projection, what we see in 20 years of time, these salt tolerant crops will not be enough salt tolerant to maintain that productivity. So we suggest to carefully look at that and have leaching and flushing out in mind.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Yeah, just to add to what Feroz already mentioned, I fully support that. I just want to mention one example of farmers that I spoke that grow watermelon, and they grow that in a situation where earlier on they did sesame, and then I asked them which one is more salt tolerant. And all the farmers knew that the sesame is more salt tolerant. So I was kind of heavily surprised that why would they then move to watermelon? And the main reason for the watermelon is in a way that if you are early with the watermelon in the season, you fetch a high price. So one, they moved to a less salt tolerant crop, and two, they moved to a riskier crop. So these are two different changes that I wouldn't expect. So we should continuously check assumptions that we make on what farmers are to do and what they actually choose to do and why they choose to do it. So that's just what I wanted to add, besides that there are, of course, many ways how farmers do try to adjust.
Thank you so much. Looking at the time, and I think I would like to say thank you to Dr. Catherine, Dr. Feroz, and then the Aloxica for really for the interactive discussion. Thanks, Feroz, for starting the global thing and how that translating to the food system at the, I mean, in the context of the Bangladesh, and then Catherine just giving some examples as a part of that one, what's happening, what are the farmer understanding, what are the transition pathways, and how that's linking with the food system. And thanks, Dr. Alok, for sharing your insight about that one. And you asked many interesting questions, and we don't have the, as a scientist, answer of everything. But we look around that one, how we could contribute, and how whatever the discussion we are having it today, and that may generate some new questions, and we'll be working it together in future. And just for the people who have participated, we are thankful to you for really raising the question, mentioning it, everything. We'll be producing a blog from that one, and this video will be available on that one on the YouTube in the coming weeks. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Mohsin.
Thank you.
And just last, because some of the things people can also venture into biosaline agriculture. That's something that halophytes and other things can be integrated. So anyway, all right. So thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.